You're listening to the Reconditioned podcast, and in the first of a two-part series where I try to get to the bottom of the long-standing debate on whether it's healthier to be fully plant-based or have some organic animal products. Today I speak with plant-based women's health doctor, Dr. NITU BAJEKAL. Stay tuned.
Your personality creates your personal reality.
Authentic power is when your personality comes to serve the energy of your soul.
The truth is the body is one ecosystem. You can get to the root cause and everything goes away.
Welcome to the Reconditioned podcast, where I use my knowledge and expertise of over a decade in the wellness and transformation world to take a deep dive into what makes us thrive as humans. I'm Lauren Vaknin, leading wellness and transformation coach, and following my remission from the rheumatoid arthritis I'd had for 27 years that left me wheelchair-bound by the age of 18, I created a unique coaching combination, conflating physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of self to create true, long-lasting well-being in all senses of the word. This podcast is one of the many free resources I've created to help you achieve the same. Whether you're suffering from chronic illness, raising children in a world of conflicting information, you're an entrepreneur wanting to step into your purpose, or you simply want to feel empowered and motivated to become the best version of yourself, join me along with expert guests as we uncover the most actionable and tangible ways to recondition ourselves back to wellness. The Recondition Your Life Academy is going to be open for enrollment again from the 24th of August for a few short days. It only opens 3 times a year and there are limited spaces because I keep these groups intimate. And of course, it's first come, first served. You can head to laurenvaknincoaching.com and go to the client love page to see what Academy alumni is saying about how the course changed their lives. From helping to find their purpose, to finally recovering from trauma, to finally being able to manifest their dream relationship after being single for years, to understanding their body better in order to recover from illness, to, just actually being happy for the first time. If you are not in complete alignment in your life, if you've read all the self-help books, you've taken all the courses, you're listening to all the motivational speakers, but nothing is shifting for you, and you are just so ready to be happy and fulfilled already, if you're ready to become your best self and start manifesting into your life everything you dream of, the Recondition Your Life Academy is for you. It's a 12-week remote course where you are coached by me personally and alongside a sacred tribe of like-minded women, all there to up-level their lives. We work through the 4 aspects of self: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, tackling every aspect of self that could be broken until we heal the whole person. It is unique. You will not find anything else out there like it, and it changes lives every single time. Just check out all the video testimonials on my Instagram highlights to see what I mean. The transformations as a result of this course have been life-changing, and you could have that too. And I want you to have that too. So get a guaranteed spot by getting your name on the waiting list over at laurenvaknincoaching.com/recondition and put the steps in place to recondition your life today. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining once again. Ooh, it's an interesting one today. So you guys know that informed choice, informed consent is my jam. That is my thing. That is why I created this podcast, because there is so much conflicting information out there when it comes to everything to do with health. And if we think about it, like everything is health. What isn't health? You know, everything we do, all the choices we make contribute to our health or lack thereof. So there is this long-standing debate on whether fully plant-based diet or a diet that has some organic animal produce is healthier. Now I say organic, and I'm going to state that and restate that because always for me, if it was a choice between non-organic or no meat, it's always going to be no meat, because non-organic meat has growth hormones, antibiotics, steroids, the works. The animal's been kept in horrible conditions. You know, the ethical side of it, we don't even need to go in. It's just dire. So weighing up those plant-based or some organic animal products, products from healthy animals. Which one is the right one? Is there a right one, or is it an individualized approach? I believe in an individualized approach to everything. When we get to the end of the 2-part series, perhaps I will have a different conclusion, and I will put that on next week's episode intro, because I would have recorded the episode already with Dr. Rimka, who's going to be giving us the counter argument. Not that I wanted to make this an argument, and I specifically didn't do this as one episode with both women on the show, because I don't like pitting women against each other. I think everyone's entitled to their views. I always have believed that everything comes down to an individualized approach when it comes to healthcare. So let's see if my mind has changed by the end of this. So today I interviewed Dr. NITU BAJEKAL, who is a women's health doctor, and she is fully plant-based. And now what I will preface is that there was a lot of stuff in this episode that I didn't agree with. Now, I'm not one for censoring, so I wasn't going to not air this or cut anything out, because I wanted to get her opinion on a plant-based diet. However, some of the things that I didn't agree with, she does bring up vaccines. Obviously, I was vaccine injured. That is my own personal experience, which no one can take away from me. And that happened, and that is what triggered the arthritis in me before I was 2 years old. I don't like spending too much time talking about vaccines on the podcast, but there is a lot of corruption there, and I believe it's important for people to have all the information. It's multifactorial, it's multifaceted, it's a multifaceted argument where it's not, oh, vaccines helped or vaccines are unsafe. There is so much more to it. And so I kind of cut her off because I didn't want this conversation to be about that and for the listeners to get distracted on that conversation. This was about plant-based or not. There are also lots of animal proteins in vaccines, so that might be something to consider. The other thing, she talks a lot about soya and how she has non-organic soya, which is non-GMO. But from my research, and obviously, yes, she is a doctor, I am not. However, that has never stopped me before from believing that the things that I study and the years of self-study and people that I have come across in this space as a result of my quest for answers when it comes to healthcare have led me to information that I don't believe I need a medical degree for, and my knowledge is just as valid. So it's my belief that the phytoestrogens in soya are not beneficial to human health. And she also talks about having that because it has added vitamins, and she mentions this about taking folic acid and iron supplements as well. Now, I am vehemently opposed to any synthetic vitamins, anything that is not methylated. About 70% of us have a gene mutation called MTHFR. There are many other gene mutations and polymorphisms as well that I speak about extensively in articles that you can have a look at on my blog, which is laurenvakneen.co.uk. I'll link one of those articles below. And I've done a lot of research into this and into epigenetics and especially MTHFR. Any of us who do have MTHFR, which like I said is around 70% of the population, most people don't even know that they've got it. It's not something that doctors look into or doctors test for, which is another reason why I don't believe that doctors know everything. It means the liver of a person with MTHFR will essentially convert a vitamin into a toxin, and you have less ability to detoxify. So our detoxification pathways are more closed. So synthetic vitamins get converted into toxins. So anything like synthetic folic acid, synthetic vitamin B12, these should be methylfolate, methylcobalamin, as in folate and B12. That's what you should be taking if you do need to supplement. I also think we should get where we can everything from food, and what we can't, we should be supplementing with non-synthetic, really high-grade vitamins. So my opinion on what she said about folic acid, synthetic folic acid is a no-no. I know that there is a lot of research linked between synthetic folic acid, women who have MTHFR, and miscarriage. I did a lot of research on this myself. I wrote an article about this. And iron supplements. I am really opposed to iron supplements. Iron, we can be low in iron for many reasons. It could be whether it's the hemoglobin, whether it's the ferritin, or it could even be that you don't have enough copper, and copper is what transports iron around the blood. When doctors take blood tests, they don't tell you this, they don't look into this, they just give iron supplements, which could lead to iron toxicity, which also isn't healthy. So I believe everything is multifaceted. If your iron is low and your doctor is telling you that you have low iron and you need to increase your iron, I don't think the answer is always iron supplements. And if it is, there are healthier ways of getting it, and that's stuff that the doctors prescribe that makes your poop go black. So I'm just prefacing that because I don't want to censor her. She is entitled to her own opinion and her own research and her own knowledge, and it may be valid for some people. A lot of it wasn't valid for me. I do believe what she says about the ethical side of eating animal products. Obviously, if no one was eating animal products, the planet would be a lot healthier, especially because of factory farming, mass farming and all of that, which I really am strongly opposed to. It hurts my heart. And I believe if anyone has the choice, if you are eating animal products, it should always be organic. And if it's not organic, don't eat it. That's the choice. And if it's a case of, well, I can't afford organic meat, then don't eat meat. That would be my choice. Go and get some beans and lentils and pulses and be on a plant-based diet. So that is that side of things. Obviously, I do mention this when I speak to her, but just very quickly to preface why I've done this, because I was a vegetarian for a long time. Ethically, it always spoke to me. I wanted to be vegetarian. I felt better in my mind, in my soul as a vegetarian. But every time I have ever been with a holistic practitioner, from my homeopath to my functional medicine doctor to my acupuncturist, and this is 2 different homeopaths as well, and now with the South American shaman I'm working with, every one of them puts me back on animal products. And I have since had bloods, genetic reports, everything leads to me, my personal genetic makeup, needing some animal products in my diet. And my body does feel better with it. So all I can say is that is my observational evidence for me. Ethically, it still doesn't feel right. But if every single practitioner has done that, but prefacing that, that's why it made sense to me to do these episodes, because I really am unbiased. I want to be vegetarian for ethical reasons, but it feels like my body needs meat. Therefore, I believe and don't believe in both. So I'm completely unbiased coming to this. So that's why I wanted to do these 2 episodes as kind of a like little challenge thing where we really see at the end, okay, what one seems to hold up more, or is it an individualized approach? I believe everything's an individualized approach. So let's see if I get proven wrong. But I'm going to let you get on with the episode now. So thank you for being here. Make sure you tune in to next week's one as well, which will be next Friday, because obviously it's going to be the counter argument with Dr. Stephanie Rimker, who I'm a massive fan of, who does some amazing work in the natural health space. She's a brain doctor, all about brain optimization. She's incredible. So make sure you tune into both and get in touch with me over on Instagram and let me know your thoughts on this. Okay, here goes. Dr. NITU BAJEKAL is a senior NHS consultant obstetrician and gynecologist in the UK with over 35 years of clinical experience in women's health. She is a fellow of the Royal College and recipient of the Indian President's Gold Medal. She's one of the first US board-certified lifestyle medicine physicians in the UK. She has written the Women's Health module for the first UK university-based plant-based nutrition course. Dr. BAJEKAL is also the founder of Women for Women's Health, a voluntary service set up to educate, energize, and empower women to make lifestyle choices to help improve their own and their family's health. Dr. BAJEKAL is passionate about educating women, providing reliable medical and lifestyle information for the general public, doctors, workplaces, and schools. She is an advocate for plant-based living and incorporates this where possible into her work. And that is what we want to speak to her today. So welcome, Dr. BAJEKAL.
Thank you. Thank you. You can call me NITU, Lauren.
NITU, okay. Welcome, NITU.
Yes, absolutely fine. And no, thank you very much for having me on this podcast. It's I always love talking about what I do and what people want to hear. So
perfect. Well, as you know, what people want to hear from my podcast, my listeners, and what I have wanted to do for a long time is to get a balanced view on plant-based diet versus a diet rich in organic animal protein. There are arguments for both sides. Now, I come at this from a totally unbiased perspective because I have been both. And I have my reasons for agreeing or not agreeing with both. In for my own journey, I was vegetarian for a long time for ethical reasons. It's always been ethical reasons for me, which regardless of any of this, no one can argue that for ethical reasons, obviously not eating animals is the only choice. But what's happened with me is that whenever I've been in remission from arthritis for 8 years, whenever I had a flare up or anything that has happened with my health, every holistic practitioner I have ever gone to, from my homeopath to my functional medicine doctor to my acupuncturist, either based on bloods or energy work or Vega machine, whatever it was, would say, you need to eat meat. The same thing happened at the end of my pregnancy with my daughter. My iron levels were really, really low, and they weren't going to let me have a home birth. And I was desperate to have a home birth. And because obviously if I needed a blood transfusion or anything like that, and my homeopath said, Lauren, I want you to eat some meat. And so I did. My husband picked me up some organic meat, and what it felt like was, and I always use this analogy, you know, when Popeye eats the spinach and his muscles pop up, that's how I felt. Like this, the color came back to me. I felt better. My iron went up. Everything felt better. But then I'd assumed that after kind of having her in those kind of early weeks, I would go back to being vegetarian. And then I started working with a South American shaman who gives everyone an individualized approach based on their own unique situation. But he put me back on meat. And it's always organic. It always has to be, you know, kind of pasture-reared, grass-fed, organic, healthy animals. And I feel like no matter how much I've tried to be vegetarian, I've always come back to meat. And at the moment, I'm not even allowed any pulses or legumes or beans, which was my staple beforehand, especially coming from kind of a Mediterranean background. So that is my reason for wanting to do this, because there are conflicting views, as there is in anything with healthcare. And you are an expert in this. And next week, I'm going to be interviewing an expert on the other side. So I thought I would kind of hand over to you, and we can start talking about why you believe plant-based is genuinely the healthier option. But before we do, I always start by asking my guests, what have you done so far today to support your wellness?
So what do you mean by today, as in today?
Yeah, have you done anything so far today to support your wellness? Go for a walk, have a special drink, any of that kind of stuff?
So I have woken up and I have meditated for about 15 minutes. I had a little bit of a difficult night last night because I was struggling with a bit of hay fever, because I walk, about anywhere between 90 minutes to 3 hours every day with my dogs, whatever my work schedule may be. We find the time to do that. I have 2 rescue pups. So yes, I was on a long walk and I've done that. I will be doing a Pilates class online. I find the online classes are much better. And then in between, I will be working on my book and on some recorded lectures that I have to do, and also do a clinic with patients. So it's a packed day.
Busy.
Yes, but I love what I do. I don't really think of it as work. I have never thought of it as work. I always knew I wanted to do obstetrics and gynecology. And it was as I was working in obs and gynae and operating on all these patients and looking after all these pregnant women, as well as women, at extremes of life, teenagers, as well as older people, I realized that there was something missing. And that was basically lifestyle advice, which we hadn't been taught. And my own story comes in there because I became went through premature ovarian failure at the age of 38. And so I was really quite shocked and didn't know where to turn. I knew the medical side of things, but I didn't realize, and I realized that there's a lot of unscientific advice out there. And for me, when I talk about plant-based nutrition, I only work with the science, because I'm a vegan as well, but being vegan is an ethical philosophy. It's got really nothing to do with health as such, although I do believe it's all connected. And I think as a health practitioner, it is unethical, I think, if in the same breath you do not talk about planetary health, because there's no point, you being healthy, for example, me being healthy on a planet that has been ravaged doesn't add up at all. So for me, even discussing, the merits of plant-based nutrition, first of all, based on science, which is really important, but also in context of planetary health and the sentient beings that we share the world with, becomes extremely difficult, simply because there is very little argument on the other side. You can't bring yourself to say, there are individual variations. I'm not talking about people who don't have the privilege. Of course, if you are on a desert, or if you are, really very poor, then of course, if you get an egg or you drink goat's milk, that's absolutely fine. Anybody who has the privilege of choosing health and having choice, my question always is, why would you choose to be hurtful or harmful to the planet or to your body or to the animals that you're abusing? So that is where I come from. But let's talk more about the plant-based side of things. So I realized that as I was looking after patients, that I was observing very keenly the foods that they were eating. And, and most of my patients in my private practice setting, especially, were eating organic meats and organic chicken, and, were very health conscious, doing their walks, doing their yoga. And day after day in my clinic, both on the NHS and privately, I would see these young, fit women in their early 30s, late 30s, early 50s, with breast cancer, with their partners with prostate cancer, with polycystic ovarian syndrome, with raging endometriosis. And I started putting two and two together, and I was really quite horrified that I hadn't been taught any nutrition at all, anything to do with lifestyle in my medical practice. And even as a training program director for Obs and Gynae, when I tried to bring it in, there was a lot of resistance because we don't know how to talk about lifestyle. So unfortunately, people start seeing, people who are coming without the science background. And so they throw these things in. There are no randomized trials. There are no long-term observational studies. And we know from the Global Burden of Disease study, which is the largest study that looked at 195 countries, they found that people who don't eat carbohydrates, people who don't eat, their main diet is not full of legumes, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, have the highest risk of dying, irrespective of how much junk food they eat, irrespective of that. So it doesn't matter what you do, if you're not filling your plate with fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, whole grains, intact whole grains, minimally processed whole grains, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, you stand a very, very high chance, as we can see in most countries now, of cancers, and of course the top killers for women, heart disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which leads to kidney failure and amputations, and dementia. Dementia now accounts for 18% of all female deaths. It's a top killer in the UK, the top killer.
Can I interrupt just for a second, because this is great and I'm loving all of it.
Yeah.
And where I've got questions, I want to be able to just ask,
you can ask me. Yeah, you can ask me anything. So we can.
What I want, and I'm not playing, I guess I am playing a little bit devil's advocate, but
you can do anything. No
what
problem.
my job is to ask what the listeners are thinking themselves.
Totally.
Right? So how I always see it, and how I come, and I've been researching, kind of pharmaceuticals and that whole thing for a very long time, and my own healing journey kind of, tipped me on that. There are always variables, and it's multifactorial, right?
Yes.
So are we looking at those illnesses and looking what else are those people putting in their bodies? Are they, okay, you said irrespective of junk food, so that was a really good point to know.
Yes.
Because how much sugar are they eating? But
Correct.
Let's think about breast cancer. We know that aluminium causes breast cancer, toxic deodorants, body products, cleaning products. How much kind of pharmaceutical medication are they taking? In my mind, I feel like all that contributes as well.
Of course it contributes, but don't forget that the biggest surface area of our body is our intestine, our gut. And our gut, when you unfold it out, is much bigger than even our lungs. It's something like 2 tennis courts. That is the amount of absorption. The first thing that our internal environment faces from the external environment is the food we eat and the drink we drink. So you have to look at the science. So yes, aluminium, endocrine disruptors, these all may play a tiny, tiny, tiny role. And just to give you an idea, probably 1 in 1,000 women in China will get breast cancer, for example, in rural China. And when they move to Hong Kong, which they start eating what is known as a rich person's disease, rich person's diet, which includes things like cheese and dairy milk, we know that these contain insulin-like growth factors, growth hormone, because it's meant for a baby cow to be made into a big cow. So what then ends up happening, it stimulates the breast tissue. And as a result, what happens is when you are doing this from a very early age, you start stimulating breast tissue, which is why menarche, or the early start of periods, tends to be because in the Western world, especially earlier, because of the high intake of animal products that are full of hormones. Because those hormones, even if it's organic, are still full of hormones, because that's the job of animal tissue. It has hormones in it, you know, so it has
that's why I
fat
never
in it.
gave my kids milk.
Yes. So whether it's
Cow's
milk
milk.
or red meat or poultry or anything, they all have to have saturated fat. They have to have, you know, just like our bodies have to have. And so at the end of the day, when you look at person from China who moves to Hong Kong, the risk becomes 1 in 100. Now, the risk in the UK, the US, and all developing or developed countries is now 1 in 7 to 1 in 8. So that's 1 in 8 of us is going to get a diagnosis of breast cancer, and it's getting earlier and earlier. And that is to do a lot to do with not just our sedentary lifestyle, which of course plays a role, being, carrying excess weight. Of course, that plays a huge role because smoking is not that much of a risk factor now. Being of heavier weight or excess weight is probably one of the risk factors. And you can only be of heavier weight when you eat foods that are not good for us, generally animal foods, as well as ultra processed foods, so refined foods, so white sugar, white bread, white rice. So really what the global burden of disease study, for example, was showing, what the China study was showing, what my own practice has shown, that the more you fill your plate, and that is the same for me in my own personal experience. And, you just don't have to be iron deficiency anemia at all on a plant-based diet. There is absolutely no reason at all. I see the same number of anemic people on an omnivore diet, just because most diets are poorly planned.
Yes.
They're not, you could be a vegan on a very poor diet. You could be an omnivore and most people are on very poor diets. And there is also a flip side here. The iron that you're intaking also comes with something that is quite nasty, what is known as heme iron. Heme iron causes something called oxidative stress. It inflames and causes tissue aging, something called advanced glycation end products, which we know damages our ovaries particularly. And women or people with PCOS tend to suffer from these high levels of receptors of advanced glycation end products. So when they eat barbecued meats, when they eat even boiled chicken has more advanced glycation end products than fried potatoes, So we do want to make sure that people understand it doesn't matter what you eat. You want to eat red meat, and you're not worried about the ethical side of things or the humane side of things. That is your choice. Your choice is completely allowed. That's fine. But if you're talking about health based on science, then every single diet, every single long living population has survived based on eating a mostly or predominantly or a plant-based diet. That's what you have to remember. Whole grains, legumes, beans, peas, lentils, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables. Without fiber, remember the gut I told you about, all that lining of the gut, you need fiber. Without fiber, and there's zero fiber, not a single gram of fiber in that piece of steak you would have eaten, not one. While a cup of beans would give you all the iron that you want, probably more iron than the beef, but also more bioavailable because it's non-heme iron. And if you're anemic, you tend to absorb it more. And anyway, even if you were anemic, what you would need is iron tablets. That is the much better way, whether you're an omnivore or this, because you have a better control in pregnancy. You want to know that you're supplementing if you're iron deficient. Just like you should be taking your folic acid, just because you can get folate from green leafy vegetables. No, you have to take folic acid. We have the studies. We know the science. When you bleed so quickly, you'll end up with a blood transfusion. So where I'm coming at is I am not at all somebody who wants to say, I'm going to watch what you eat and I'm going to tell you that you can't eat chicken, you can't eat red meat, you can't eat eggs. But I'm telling you that they're not good for you because every time you eat them, you're missing out on putting health in your mouth. So it's not that a donut is completely bad if you ate it once a year. But if you ate it every other day, you're missing the chance of eating a big bowl of mango with some dark chocolate drizzled on it. Every time you eat a piece of chicken or a piece of fish, you're missing the chance of eating a big bowl of minestrone soup with some, rye bread, or a stir fry with lots of tofu in it, and eating your porridge with soya milk in it. So it's not that there are choices that are all bad. There's no food that is good or bad. It just depends on how often you eat it, how frequently you eat it. But you're not going to get anything specifically from these foods that plant foods can't give you. That is my experience with my patients. That's what I see in my own family with my husband, turning around his diabetes, because he used to eat just eggs and fish. He never even ate red meat. And it was only when he went plant-based. But, we're not talking about N of 1. We're talking about large-scale studies. And that's what the large-scale studies show. So, you're looking for nutrients. You can get each of those nutrients, just like the elephant and the rhino and the hippo does, and just like the gazelle and the deer does. You and I can get that. So I'm not in agreement with these health professionals who are advising, many of whom actually haven't read the science. And that is the problem. They don't actually know the science. But yes, I'm happy for any queries you have in that or any further questions.
Well, yeah, a few actually. So when you say about kind of, people from around the world who have thrived on, I've read a lot of Weston A. Price stuff. He kind of went around and observed tribes and tribal living, and they all had quite, they would eat meat, and that was and fish and the things that were available to them. So tribes in kind of by the sea would have lots of sea product, fish, and and the tribes that were kind of out in the lands would eat meat. And so it wasn't that those people weren't thriving on that because that was what was available to them. And I guess what I want to...
If you look at the Paleolithic, all the evidence, then people were eating about 100 grams of fibers, up to 150 grams of fiber. And still today, the tribal groups that you're talking about still eat over 100 grams of fiber.
Right. So the point is that it has to be a balance, because you still have to be getting that fiber. You can't just eat meat. And then
do you know how you can get 100 grams of fiber? Even me as a whole food plant-based gets about 60 to 80 grams of fiber, and I'm only eating plants. So, and the average British person or American person gets less than 18 grams, and we're supposed to get 30 to 45 grams. So to eat 100 grams of fiber, the predominant part of your daily diet has to be fiber. Can't be anything else. You physically cannot get any fiber otherwise. But yes, of course, if they had some, they had a specific festival, they would, kill the hog and have it, or they do some shooting, or with a bow and arrow. But I don't know if you've heard about the blue zones. Have you heard about the blue zones?
Yeah.
Okay. So the blue zones are 5 areas in the world. Okay. And I would urge all your listeners to look them up, because that's really important. So the one is in Sardinia in Italy. You have Icaria in Greece. You have Nicoya in Costa Rica. You have the 7-Day Adventists in Loma Linda. And I think you have Okinawa in Japan. So these are people, these blue zones. Dan Buettner of National Geographic actually discovered these groups and has written a wonderful book. So the blue zones are people who live they have the highest group of centenarians, the highest number of people who live, into their 80s, 90s, live into their hundreds. But I'm not talking about how people live in this country, where people spend their last 10, 15 years in a home, in a hospice with dementia. These are people who gently go into the night. Okay. And when he looked at their diets, of course, it was not just looking at the nutrition. They were, active. They had friends, the social network, their sleep, their stress levels, all was very important. But what was binding most of them, or in their things? So you had some extremes, like Loma Linda only ate plants, so they're plant-based, while you have Icaria, I think, that does eat some pork. But generally speaking, all of them were eating huge amounts of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. Some had olive oil, some had some occasional fish, but generally speaking, it was a plant predominant diet. And we know that from just watching our own patients, that when you include these foods into your diet, you get health, because complex carbohydrates, the World Health Organization has very clearly said, our diets need to be at least 55% carbohydrate. And by carbohydrate, I don't mean your donut or your cake or your white bread. By carbohydrates, I mean complex carbohydrates and carbohydrates with a low glycemic load. So we're talking fruits, vegetables, beans, and legumes and whole grains. So blue zones is something that has given us a lot of observation because they've been there for centuries. Just like the China study, women moving from China to Hong Kong to the UK, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100, 1 in 7 breast cancer. We know that, and we see it. I have patients with metastatic cancer who have turned their lives around. Those are all small numbers, so we can't talk about them really. N of 1 is not important. It's observation and science that tells us. The broad study, the New Zealand study, showed that the only group that put weight, who lost more weight than any other control group, but kept it off. Even 2 years down the line. Remember, every diet you can lose weight. You can lose weight, snorting cocaine. You can lose weight smoking cigarettes. You can lose weight eating only meat. But what is the point of losing weight only for it to come back in 3 to 6 months? And also, you're damaging your health in the long term, making your diabetes worse, making your heart disease worse, making your polycystic ovary syndrome worse, making endometriosis worse. The Nurses' Health Study looked at 175,000 women. And they found that if you sat for more than 2 hours, you had a 25% chance of being of excess weight. But similarly, they found that if you drank even 3 cups of small portions of dairy, you had a higher chance of breaking your hip bone. You also had a higher chance of endometriosis for every bit of red meat that you ate. And the more citrus fruits and more green leafy vegetables you ate, the lower was the risk of your endometriosis. Same thing with fibroids. These are lumps of muscle. So we have so much of scientific information that really I have yet to meet a scientist or a researcher who can show me any evidence, zero evidence, that a meat-based diet can be of any good to you. Yes, you want to include it in small amounts because you like the taste and you don't really care that much about the planet and you don't care so much about your children's future and you're not so bothered about animals. If that is because you feel your own health is the most important, that's absolutely fine. Or your own taste is more, that is fine. But no scientist has yet shown me a single randomized trial that has shown consistently that anybody who eats a meat predominant diet actually does better. I have never seen it in real life either.
My only counter to that is that I've seen a lot of things in my life that science hasn't or won't do studies on. And there is a lot of corruption in science. There's a lot of corruption with medical journals. I myself was vaccine injured at the age of 2, and I know thousands of other people who were, and yet no science journal, medical journal will state that happens. That's
so empirical. They do state. We have a whole something called WAERS, and
yes,
I come from India, and I would tell you firsthand the number of millions of children that have been saved with vaccines. To deny anybody a vaccine is fine in the first world or developed world if somebody wants to take that decision. But it is something that is so hurtful and harmful to the larger population that it is not something that I would advocate. Having seen children die just because their parents couldn't bring them in time from silly little things like measles and chickenpox.
I'm going to stop this because I think perhaps we're not going to agree on this subject, and I don't want it to get onto what my point is that there is often empirical evidence based on observation. So I've seen lots of things in my life and met many people.
That's fine.
And observed things that science or medical journals might not show that might still be the case regardless. And just because someone hasn't written it in a medical study doesn't mean someone else's observation or someone else's reality and experience is less valid. And that's
absolutely
what that for me is science also. What is science at the end of the day? It's observation, understanding. But let's go to, you were talking about legumes and pulses, and that was my staple, right? There is nothing better for me than a dal. Like that is my love, right? And I'm missing it so much at the moment. Like lentils and chickpeas. I'm not Israeli, so like hummus for me is my life. However, there is a school of thought that says meat is inflammatory, and there's another school of thought that says lectins are inflammatory. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that.
So the problem with people not understanding about lectins is that, yes, there is a protective cover for each lentil because it's trying to protect itself until it's ready to become into a tree. Nobody eats raw lentils. Okay. So what you want to always do is you want to cook them. When you cook them, the lectin is not an issue. We know that the large number of patients that I see who have got bowel issues, who may have been misdiagnosed as endometriosis and vice versa, they often have their gut health has been destroyed because of the kind of foods that they've been eating. And then they're suddenly trying to introduce legumes and things into their diet. So my advice in that situation would be always start slow, start low. So you start with a teaspoon of really well-cooked dal and you add things, which are spices. So, things like asafoetida and which is hing, and all different spices really helps with absorption of the lentils. Lectins on their own are a non-issue, complete non-issue, because once you've cooked them, and you don't cook them raw, you cook them until they're so soft that with the back of the fork, you can actually mash them. There are other ways also that are age-old in all age-old cuisines, because what we do is we sprout, we ferment, we soak, we then cook it. So those are things that often what has happened in the Western world is that people don't know how to make lentils, make legumes. So they end up with bloating, discomfort, and on top of that, they're often, remember the gut again, I'm coming back again to the gut, but the gut that I was talking about contains something like 300 trillion bacteria, archaea and fungi and things like that, of which there are many groups that live on fiber. They provide the health. So if you have encouraged your gut to be full of E. coli, Shigella, Salmonella, all the secondary bile acid producing bacteria, so these don't know what to do with fiber. So as soon as you eat that, you get acute pain, you get all these acute symptoms because they have been subsisting on animal products, which then releases all kinds of, 5-MeO-GC and TOR and things like that. So legumes, if you are somebody who's sensitive to it, you should work with a gastroenterologist, somebody like Dr. Alan Desmond, for example, who is very renowned, Dr. Will, who's very renowned, or with a registered dietitian who will actually take you through how you can heal your gut, because the human body is very forgiving. Even if you are somebody who has eaten all kinds of foods all your life, it will actually forgive you and allow you to bring plant-based foods back, because that's how we evolved. We evolved eating roots and berries and leaves and shoots. We were on trees, then we came down, and we continue to eat like that. It's a very new phenomenon. You have to remember, it's only about 150 years ago that we started, as soon as industrialization came, you started having these big pastures and factory farming and things like that. So that is where one has to understand that lectins is a non-issue, complete non-issue. You should never exclude them from your diet. No person will have a good story to tell at the end of it, having excluded complex carbohydrates. Never. I've never seen it in my 35 years. I don't see it every day. And I see health coming back when people bring these things back. And you have to do it gently, just like you would. You wouldn't suddenly go and lift, 1,000 kilograms in the gym. You're going to start with tiny 0.5 kilogram weights and then 1 kilogram, and you slowly do. If you've never exercised, we tell people to do 5-minute exercise bursts. That's important. So you've got to train your gut again. That is the important thing. So yes, lectins is really a non-issue. Not a single scientific reliable paper has ever been published to show that legumes are harmful. In fact, the contrary. And as you said, yes, science may be this thing, but we're talking about researchers who often, in different countries, they don't really have any axe to grind. I meet a lot of researchers and they just are so hell-bent on finding the science behind things. And that's what they talk about. And that's why I say, if you want to include small amounts of animal products, small amounts of cheat meat, small amount of ultra-processed foods, because you're otherwise healthy, that's fine. But yes, if you have a diagnosis of diabetes or heart disease and things, really the way to work forward is eating plants.
We'll be back to the episode really soon, but first, a quick word from our sponsors. So regular listeners will know that I only affiliate with brands whose products I already use and trust. Integrity is one of my company's core values, and I feel really strongly about knowing that my listeners can be in full trust about any product I endorse. I personally contacted Block Blue Light UK after using their blue blocking glasses when I had to start working later into the evening. I began wearing the blue blockers because I was aware of what being exposed to the artificial blue light of my laptop would do to my circadian rhythm if I was working after dark, and especially because we spend so much time on them during the day. After using them for a few months, there was a noticeable difference in how quickly I was able to fall asleep after finishing work not that long before. During the lockdowns and homeschooling my son, I also got him a kids pair, and he now wears them anytime he's at a screen, not just after dark. And I feel really strongly about how important it is for both us and our children. Now, if you've never heard of blue light blocking, and this is the first time you're hearing it, studies have shown that artificial blue light from screens, devices, and all modern lighting are having detrimental effects on our health. Artificial blue light disrupts our sleep, interferes with our hormones, and causes digital eye strain, which can lead to long-term eye health issues. Since using the glasses myself, and by the way, they do amazing fit-over glasses that fit seamlessly over any glasses you might already have to wear, which has been priceless for me because I have to wear my glasses when I'm at a screen. I've noticed better sleep quality and an improvement in the thyroid issues I was struggling to balance out fully since having my kids. Bonus! Since Block Blue Light's sponsorship for last season, hundreds of you have made a decision to improve your health and your sleep by ordering their products, and I'm only hearing positive things, which was exactly my intention for this collaboration. So to check out all of Block Blue Light's incredible health boosting products, including day and nighttime glasses, blue light blocking light bulbs, and 100% light blocking sleep masks to help you into a deeper sleep, visit blockbluelight.co.uk and use the code Lauren10 for a 10% discount. That's blockbluelight.co.uk and use the code Lauren10. Thank you so much to Block Blue Light. I'd like to talk about the ancestral element for a moment. I've written extensively and studied extensively on epigenetics. It's a real passion of mine. And what I've seen, again, observation. I have a lot of Indian friends who have always been vegetarian or vegan, and their families have always been the same. Vegetarian or vegan. I've got Indian friends who are either one.
Because veganism is not something that is part of Indian history.
No, because they've always had the milk from
dairy.
The cows, but I have a lot of Hare Krishna friends who only have the dairy from the protected cows, but generally most of them are vegan most of the time. But let's just talk about kind of vegetarian Indian people, or just generally people who have been raised and ancestrally have always eaten plants more than and a diet rich in legumes and pulses. In my observation, and this is totally observation, and I just wanted to bring this up because it's always been I work a lot with kind of ancestral healing as well, and I think it's an important thing to bring up. What I see when I observe is that they are thriving on a plant-based diet, and that works for them. Now, is that because ancestrally in their DNA they've never had meat, so therefore their DNA has kind of evolved to thrive on a diet like that, whereas people who, I know you said about factory farming, but for example, where my ancestors would have come from, they would have maybe found an animal and killed it for their family, and that animal they would have used every part of it, and it would have fed a family for a long time, but predominantly that they would have had plants more than anything, because how often could you
can't afford it? It was all about economics. And the same thing with India. India is not a vegetarian country. Less than 20% of Indians are actually vegetarian. Remember, 80% of India is non-vegetarian. It's because
all my friends here.
That's because they're upper class. They're upper class, upper caste, like myself. And so the narrative is that India is vegetarian. India is not vegetarian.
No, I know that India is not vegetarian, but what I'm saying is, so are you saying that ancestrally
they have always eaten meat? Even Hindus have eaten
meat?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Okay.
Right. So that's my own ignorance, because I didn't think that was the case.
It's a very new thing. Okay. So always there would be a chicken running around, and they would eat chicken. Fish was always, even Brahmins, which is the uppermost caste, would eat fish because it was considered, frutti de mare, which is basically, vegetable of the sea. So they would eat fish. It would be a very small part of their diet, but they would eat it. So it wasn't for ethical reasons and things, except Jains, who, are ethically minded, so they don't want to eat any meat. But generally speaking, 80% of India is not a vegetarian. It is because generally you have to be privileged to be able to come abroad. And so privilege only happens to the upper caste in India. Okay, so that is important to understand. So with regarding evolution, yes, we have all evolved to eat mostly plants. And depending on some areas, you may have had access to some amounts of meat. So you would have brought that meat in, irrespective, whether you were in Iran, whether you were in Africa, whether you were in US, in America, it's the same. You always had to subsist on potatoes and whatever, basically what was available on the land. But also you have to remember, with when we look back, never before have humans lived this long. Okay, the average life expectancy 100 years ago would have been 35, 40 in India, for example, 50 in the UK. Now women live 83.6 or something like that in the UK. So, and that is, and Japan and Hong Kong are the highest. So we're living longer. We're not necessarily living better, but we have modern medicine to thank, because when you have hand washing, when you have vaccines, and when you have antibiotics, that is what has given us the long life, not these miracle, chemotherapeutical agents. They are not going to give you long life. So, you have to have clean water and a safe environment to live. So we are not looking to live like our ancestors, first of all. But secondly, our ancestors did start off on trees and then come down. So we have actually, and the reason why we have such big brains, which only can use glucose, it can't use any other form, whether you're on a keto diet or anything at all, the brain works on glucose. It's one of the biggest, hungriest, most energy-seeking organs in our body. And one of the big theories, which has been sort of proven, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know the details, but essentially we were on our fours, and the reason we got up and walked was because we discovered that we could eat tubers. And by tubers, I mean potatoes, yam, tapioca, sweet potatoes, and all that. We grow under the ground, and we learned to cook them. And that's when we suddenly raced ahead of all the other species. And so that's important to understand. So, as I over and over again say, if it is not for ethical reasons, if it is not for humane reasons, you want to include certain amounts of animal foods because you like the taste, because it's cultural, that's absolutely fine. But for health, if you're doing it for health, or if for any unfortunate reason you've been given a diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, heavy periods, you're pregnant and you want to reduce the number of allergies in your child, if you have got breast cancer, prostate cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer history, then you want to be eating either a plant exclusive or a plant predominant diet, which means very tiny amounts of animal products, only because, for convenience or for whatever reason. But in my experience, that never happens. If you look at most people, they'll say, oh, I don't have a lot of dairy, but they'll have a cup of tea in the morning, then they'll have it in their cereal, then they'll have some fish for lunch, and then they'll have a chicken breast with vegetables. And then, when they come to see me, they wonder why their health is in such poor shape, even though they look fine from outside. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is always think, how can you fill your plate with color rather than having colors that don't bring any health to you? Because micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and all the amino acids and proteins are present in all the plant foods. You don't have to do food combining either. You just have to eat a variety. You have to basically eat the rainbow. I know it sounds very cliched, but that's what one has to do to really see health. And it takes about 3 weeks. But I usually tell my patients that you may never go completely plant-based. That's absolutely fine. That's your choice. But the closer you can inch towards a plant-based diet, the better it is for you. And you may take 3 months to allow your gut bacteria to adapt. You may take 6 months. You may take 6 years. You may never. But that's fine. But the science is very clear. There is very little doubt. There is, in fact, no room for doubt. And as I said, if anybody can send me papers, I would be so interested, so eager to see this, because there's so much of funding done by the animal industry. So there is no problem of having loads of unethical papers, because that's where the industry thrives. Pharmaceutical industry, 80% of antibiotics are produced for feeding animals. That is the thing. The fish, most of the fish that are caught in the ocean are used to feed our cows, and we wondered why we had mad cow disease. So, it doesn't matter whether it's pasture fed or whatever. You're talking about tiny proportions. Can you imagine if the whole world started eating pasture fed, organic, allowed the animal to live its entire life? It's still, if you see the fear in an animal's eyes, that's not fun. But it's a very small group of people who can actually enjoy that kind of meat. It's not possible for the rest of the world. The rest of the world, we have 8 billion people, I think, right? And we are feeding 80 billion animals that we slaughter every year. Imagine there are at least 1 or 2 million children going hungry every single day. If you could just turn those whole grains and that monocrop soya and the monocrop corn around and do no-till farming, imagine you would get rid of child hunger. Every time what you put in your mouth, 3 times a day, you have a choice to heal ourselves and to heal the planet. Why would people not want to choose that? That is my only question. I don't understand it, because I see it every day, with PCOS. Every day I'll get patients, Dr. BAJEKAL, I haven't had my period for 3 years. I've been on a keto diet. I've been on a paleo diet. I've been on this. I've been on that. They lose a bit of weight. They come back. And then you see them thriving on a plant-based diet with their periods back in 3 months. It is really, people look for miracles, but these are miracles actually. But again, as I said, my own experience or my patient's experience is not good enough. You really have to look at the whole picture. So eating tiny amounts, if somebody wants to do that, I don't have an issue.
So what's on your plate every day?
So on my plate, so in the morning, I would tend to have a hibiscus tea, which I try and drink most of the time because I've got a family history of slightly raised blood pressure. I personally, I'm nearly 60, but I've been very fortunate so far that I don't have any issues. And so I would have a huge bowl of sprouted lentil and 5-grain porridge that my husband makes. He batch cooks it on the weekend. I have it with a cup of soya milk, not organic, because in the UK, the non-organic soya milk is what I recommend because it has all the calcium, vitamin D that is added, because organic can't have anything added. All the soya is non-GM. Yeah, all the soya in the UK is non-GM. It's important to understand. So it's all from the Sustainable Soya Group. There's a huge UK roundtable that monitors every bit of soya. Almost all the GM soya is fed to animals and goes into making sausages and things like that. So I tend to have soya milk because of the very rich. There are 3 things very particularly, I call it the magic bean. So soya has got a lot of fiber. So I eat a lot of edamame beans and tempeh and tofu and miso. It has also got all the protein, amino acids. All plants have all 9 amino acids, essential amino acids, but soya has got them in the same proportion as egg white, but without the nasties of animal food. And the third thing it has is phytoestrogens or plant estrogens, which are not actually estrogens. What they do is they work only on the beta receptor. So they are known as SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulators, which means that in your breast, they will suppress the breast tissue if you're having too much of estrogen, say from dairy or red meat or chicken and things like that. But when the time comes, it will promote breast growth, say, for example, in a teenager. Similarly, it reduces menopausal hot flushes, but will help you to drop weight and reduce your waist size, as well as strengthen your bones. So we know people who eat soya have the lowest risk of osteoporosis. So I tend to have a cup of soya milk on my porridge. I tend to have 2 tablespoons of flaxseed powder because we know that flaxseed has to be milled and has to be powdered, and it lowers your risk, like soya, for breast cancer. Okay. I tend to have a cup of green tea, but usually before midday, because green tea again helps to reduce the risk of breast cancer. Being of a healthy body weight and exercising regularly helps. So I tend to have a couple of dates that are chopped up. I have a cup of berries, I have a banana, and I have 2 tablespoons of flaxseed, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and a teaspoon of chia seeds, on a huge bowl of porridge. People think about 4 people are going to eat it, but I eat it. There's the other thing with plant-based diets is that you do have to, you can enjoy large volumes of food if you want to, or you can have the higher fat food. So I tend to eat, like an avocado most days, not every day, but I tend to have it once or twice a week. I have a big handful of nuts and seeds. I always have a variety of nuts, but especially walnuts, which I put onto my porridge. Lunch would be usually a couple of baked potatoes with baked beans if I'm in the hospital, with a salad and some hummus next to it. If I'm at home, I would have like a soup with a sourdough bread and things. Evening would be usually red rice with quinoa and dal and a couple of vegetables with it, and a huge colorful salad with beetroot and rocket and things. And if I'm very busy, if I'm operating, I'll take a smoothie in with lots of ginger and all the herbs that I grow in my greenhouse. So my dessert tends to be a cup of soy yogurt with a couple of dates and cashew nuts every day. It's always the same. And I eat a lot of fruit. As I travel in the car, I will have, anywhere between 5 and 7 fruits in a day, lots of grapes and watermelon. And also, watermelon and apples are great for sexual function in women and improves vaginal lubrication. So that's important. And watermelon is a great recovery. If you're working out and exercising, muscle recovery is very good. It's got citrulline in it. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would eat. When I go out, I then only eat vegan. So I'm not so fussed about it being whole food plant-based. I would then have a vegan pizza or a vegan burger. But at home, generally, I would use some extra virgin olive oil or a few drops of coconut oil on the top because I'm a South Indian. But generally, I don't cook in oil. I tend to use it as cold pressed, So, and same thing with free sugar. If somebody gives me a vegan brownie, I might eat it. But generally speaking, I won't go out of my way. I do love sweet things. So I tend to find I eat a lot of dried fruit and lots of, sweet fruits and things like that.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, that's a great indicator for everyone who's thinking of plant-based diet, of the kind of things you can eat and the variety that's available.
I have lots of information on my website as well, Lauren, and on my social media. I post a lot of recipes, and on my website, I've got about 50 different gynae fact sheets, as well as information on lifestyle medicine, as well as recipes, and your podcast will also go on there.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure to link all of those in the show notes, your website
Fabulous.
And your social media and all of that. Just before we end, as I told you, I do All About You, which is just a series of quick fire questions to help the listener get to know you a bit better. And the first one I always start off with for everyone is fill in the blank. Well-being is?
Well-being is being kind. For me.
Lovely. The best piece of advice you've ever been given?
This was from my father, and I was agonizing about whether I could get a very coveted post in Delhi. And he said, when you look at any space, think, is anybody else's name written there? Otherwise, there's no reason why it can't be you. So never underestimate your own power, that you as an individual can make a big difference, and you can achieve anything if you set your mind to it.
Oh, I love that. Okay, one thing from your daily self-care ritual that's non-negotiable?
My walk with my dogs.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
My rescue dogs are my life.
I know we had one dog that we had from a puppy and another rescue, but neither of them are with us anymore. But
my first dog lived
to get another one.
Yeah, my first puppy lived till he was 17, and both mine are plant-based. They're now 5.
Wow.
So it's
beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we eat the same food.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, we should all be getting rescue dogs. What would your last supper be?
My last supper would be a very big one. It would be a vegan pizza with every vegetable on it, lots of jalapenos, a nice glass of vegan rosé, and sticky toffee pudding. And before that, a very big salad with avocado and rocket and walnuts and beetroot, because that's my absolute, lots of glazed balsamic vinegar. My mouth's already watering.
Sounds amazing. Okay, and lastly,
sticky toffee pudding with custard, though.
Yeah, see, I was going to say, I agree with all of that, but I hate sticky toffee pudding. My husband loves it. It's his favorite.
It's my absolute. When I discovered the vegan options of sticky toffee pudding, I was it. absolute heaven.
Really?
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody eating it every day. No.
No, absolutely.
I'm not
But for a
believer in
Last Supper, it's okay.
Yeah.
So a charity or cause that you're really passionate about?
I'm really, really passionate about. So currently, I'm an ambassador for Made in Hackney. Made in Hackney is a community kitchen that serves and looks after people in London, especially throughout the COVID pandemic, but teaches people to cook, because I think a lot of problem that we've had, whether you eat animal products in your diet or not, that's not the point. The point is that we're so far removed from real food that people need to learn and touch. So I do workshops for women's health. So that is, of course, my baby. I run workshops for schools where we do, what can they eat, about yoga, about stress relief, about how to manage periods, about contraceptive advice, and things like that. So the charity is Made in Hackney. My own project, which is a voluntary project, not a charity, is Women for Women's Health. And yeah, that's what I believe in.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, NITU. Thank you. This season of Reconditioned is sponsored by Block Blue Light, the world's leading supplier of blue and artificial light blocking products, including blue light glasses and blue blocking lighting solutions. Blue light blocking products aim to alleviate digital eye strain, improve sleep, and optimize health through mitigating the harmful effects of artificial light from screens and modern lighting. For a 10% discount across the range, visit blockbluelight.co.uk and enter the code Lauren10. Thank you to Block Blue Light. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to Reconditioned today. I'd be so grateful if you could subscribe and maybe even leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. And better still, if you could share with friends and family who could benefit from the content, that's what I'd really love. I just want us to share the love so that everyone can understand how to use an integrative approach to life and health. For more free resources, visit laurenvakneen.co.uk and laurenvakneencoaching.com.